Sometimes people think it took 4 years to be an overnight success. I just studied 4 hours on the weekdays and like 12 on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Where do you get the motivation now?
I didn't get my first dev job until I was about 28. One thing I think people are really uncomfortable doing is quitting things that aren't working for them.
Such booming companies that you can't really go wrong with them.
It was looking like a big whole L. You get paid more to do less.
Big tech is as booming as ever, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. Even during the COVID pandemic, the FAANG companies, that's Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, grown their revenue by 50%. And even while every other business was shutting down, they were hiring fast. It's a very popular place to be. After all, you get to work with some of the smartest people in the world on some of the most exciting problems, and you get a nice bit of compensation while doing that. As a software development engineer at the level 2 at Amazon, you're making around $240,000 per year. And as a software development engineer 3, that's the senior level, you're making around $330,000 per year. We're talking to Dylan Israel today, who was kind enough to lend us some of his time to talk about his way into FAANG and Amazon specifically, and what it took for him as a college dropout and self-taught engineer to make it into that big industry. Dylan is not only an excellent software engineer, but also a conference speaker, podcaster, YouTuber, and of course, a top mentor on MentorCruise with a smooth 5 stars from over 30 mentees. Without further ado, Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Dylan Israel. I have had quite a few side projects, YouTube and podcasting being one of them. I put those on hold to do more mentoring and build courses on platforms like LinkedIn Learning. One of the ones that's kind of really cool that I'm passionate about, a little sneak peek. I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about it, but I'm actually doing the TypeScript section of W3 Schools right now, which is really fun. Just as somebody who it's weird to say grew up on W3 Schools, but somebody who started doing tutorials on there and learning, and still to this day for basic stuff going, yeah, that's right, I forgot about that. But yeah, right now I work at Amazon as a front-end engineer too on a project called Explore, which is sort of if you go to amazon.com/explore, you can check it out for some shameless promo, but really just to check out what it is I'm doing, where we are sort of digitizing travel and experiences. It's a WebRTC real-time streaming app. So it's a pretty fun thing, different than building your traditional sort of e-commerce platform or component library that I've done in the past.
That's super cool. Especially the gig with W3 Schools is part of internet history, right? It's like that one site that everyone went to when they started coding.
Those guys are great. They've been great to work with, and I do a lot of video tutorials. This is the first time I've done text tutorials, so it has its own challenges, but it's always rewarding. It's one of the things I like about mentoring. It's rewarding to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cool things about speaking at conferences is you get to actually meet people, and they sort of come up to you and be like, hey, I remember you doing that coding tutorial in your closet, and it really helped me. And it's all fun.
Humble beginnings. What was kind of the transition that you had from going to pick up coding to obviously then working at Amazon to doing all those different things in content creation and education? Did you just kind of ease into that, or was it a decision that you took?
Yeah. I mean, it's from day one to Amazon, it's about a 4-year process, right? Sometimes people think it took 4 years to be an overnight success sort of thing. It's one of those types of things where for me, I was doing the traditional college path, and for many years I was sort of half-assing it. I really was unhappy. It wasn't an environment I thrived in, but that's the thing that you get hammered in, at least in my family, is you go to college or else you'll be drug addict on the streets. I don't know what the thing is, but that's the thing, you go to college. And so I just it never worked for me for whatever reason. And finally I was like, you know what, I can be a software engineer on my own. I dropped out. I took some job where I was working 50 hours a week as a technology trainer that was doing it's kind of a cross between a business analyst and a technical writer. And I just studied 4 hours on the weekdays and 12 on a Saturday and a Sunday, just knocking out courses on Codecademy, Free Code Camp. And sort of the way YouTube started was I just wanted an interesting side project that would catch people's eyes, and then also that maybe I could make some money in the best case scenario. And that's kind of how I got started with YouTube. I started throwing it out there, and like it did exactly that. Employers were really like, "Oh, cool!" Like they got to see a little bit of me, got to see that I was growing, and eventually took a job about 3,000 miles away from California to Florida, where I am now, and have just been grinding and doing all these things ever since.
Wow, amazing. What's your system for, I guess, accountability, but also maybe energy when you're saying that you studied for hours on end and you're kind of grinding on side project and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I really am a believer of hitting rock bottoms. I think sometimes people hit a rock bottom and they keep digging, and that's unfortunate. Like it's okay to like hit a bottom and be like, that's unacceptable. And there's a couple times where my girlfriend at the time and I were like grocery shopping, and we didn't have enough money for food and like basic essentials, like underwear. I remember was one thing where I was like weighing that. And that was something that may sound silly, but it really impacted me, where I was really frustrated that like this was a scenario in my life I was dealing with. I was sleeping on floors and like doing this and sleeping on couches, and my mother was like bringing me groceries because I just couldn't do it all. Like even though I was working full time and I wasn't living this like extravagant lifestyle of like, these were just things where like I generally think at the time where I was just upset with what was going on. I didn't get my first dev job until I was about 28, and I didn't start making like a full-time transition and dedicated it till I was about 26, 27. I just wasn't happy with that, and I allowed that to fuel me to a degree. And it's like, sometimes I jokingly have said like on a live stream, like, poverty and hunger are great motivators, but that they were for me. I knew I could do better than what I was doing, and I wanted to do better. And the sort of going all in was really kind of a mentality as well. Is like, hey, I'm dropping out of school. My parents are not going to be happy about this. It's not a matter of if I'm going to be an engineer, it's a matter of when, because I'm putting in the time, the effort, the energy. I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm studying whether I want to or not, one step forward mentality every day. And I just didn't think there's any other alternative. Going back to what I was doing before wasn't working. I was miserable. And like, at least I'll be miserable here doing it my own way.
That's amazing. Now that you've reached those goals and you are an engineer and you are successful, where do you get the motivation now?
It's very strange that as you progress in your career, you get paid more to do less. It feels like it's just it's I don't know if you get better and it's easier to do, or if the expectations are just less and you do. I don't know. It's very strange. So like I find that my work is less stressful than at the start. And that might just be that I'm faster. I'm these things, you have years of experience. And the other thing is you kind of find what works for you. So one thing I think people are really uncomfortable doing is quitting things that aren't working for them. We have a very negative culture, at least in America, about quitting. Like, you don't want to be a quitter. I actually encourage you to quit things. I think too often we hold on to things that aren't good for us. And what it also stops us from doing is trying things that are new and stifling things. And people stay in toxic dynamics because they don't want to be a quitter. So, like some things I mentioned earlier, is like I did YouTube for 5 years and podcasts for about 3, and I stopped those because it's like, okay, that served a point in time, and now I'm moving on to other things that are like going to progress me in other ways, rather than continuing doing something that I'm no longer passionate about, or that maybe I'm more passionate about other things, because there is only so much time in the week, and you have to juggle your time. So like, my girlfriend and I have been dating for a year, and I've never let like mentoring interfere with that, or coding interfere with that. So I have like healthy boundaries of when I start something, when I stop something, and that it's not going to impact our date nights or family events or things like that, so that I can sort of enjoy the best of both worlds, which leaves me refreshed to go and continue the stuff outside of work. Because you're working your 40, 45 hours a week, and then you're doing another 20 plus on top of it in side projects. And to be able to do that, you have to enjoy it.
So you were motivated and studied hard to become an engineer. And obviously you did that, but when was the idea coming up of, I'm going to go for one of the big 5 or the big 6 in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been there. Obviously, I think I'm very career focused and working very hard on a lot of side projects, not only because I enjoy them, but I generally want to progress my career. And like, grow and learn. And I'm very like basic, like software engineer type that people look for in that way. Part of it might have been like a chip on the shoulder of sort of being self-taught. Is, there's one comment I remember from YouTube that I like taking these negative moments and motivating them, using them to motivate me. And I remember this one comment, and thank you to whoever said it to me, even though it wasn't meant to be support, but it's something along the lines of, even garbage men can call themselves sanitation engineers, and you'll never be one. I was like, all right. And I always remember that, of being like, and basically the comment was like, hey, self-taught engineers will never be engineers, something like that. And so, part of it was like maybe a chip on my shoulder, being like, listen, I can work anywhere and I'll prove it to you. And like going to sort of a big four, big tech companies is kind of, there's not too many places above FAANG. It's just kind of, that's kind of, you're kind of there. And so part of it was that. Part of it's just basic stuff. Like the money's great. Like I recommend everyone work at a big tech company. It's good for the bank account, good opportunities, good growth, good everything. And I just want to work with some of the best engineers in the world. I tend to believe that they exist in places where they, at big tech companies. And I can tell you that from my experience at Amazon is that I've worked with very high quality engineers, and it's made me better because of it.
I feel like big tech are such booming companies that you can't really go wrong with them, especially now. Like if we have times like COVID, you're super safe with a company like that. And obviously you always get to work on the cutting edge of things and stuff that gets used by millions around the world, which is amazing. What was kind of your start once you had that ambition, or you kind of really took that goal into your sights? What was the process like? Did you apply right away? Did you go and like study specifically for the interviews?
When I finally got accepted, I had about 3.5 or 4 years of experience. And I spent about 6 months, around 2 years. And I interviewed at I want to say Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft.
Nice.
I bombed out at each one of those interviews. And I didn't put in the time and energy into the things that I still don't think are all that important, which is like data structures and algorithms. And so that was kind of my first pass, and I sort of got a realization of what it would actually take to grow. And so I kind of challenged myself a bit there, which is oftentimes what I do. Is I go and I challenge myself and I fail, and I take L's, and then you pick yourself up, you learn from it, and you move forward. And I have a couple colleagues who've interviewed once and failed and never have tried it again. Like it's just like, oh, I interviewed at Google, I bombed out, and now I'm terrified of ever doing it again. Which it kind of goes to the quitting thing. Is like, it's okay to fail and it's okay to quit things, and you just use them as learning experiences and grow. And for as many L's as I have taken in my dating life, taking them in professionally is much easier. I assure you. Like it's you build some character that way. But it was actually a rough year because of COVID. I had like, it's just the months leading up to getting like the Amazon job, which will be a year this month. I had like a 10-year relationship end, and then COVID was going crazy, and like it was just me all the way across the country. So it was very like a rough year. It's very depressed and just like dealing with a whole bunch of mental health issues. And so towards the end of the year, I started feeling better. I gone through this whole, like, you go through this sort of breakup montage where you're eating healthy, you're exercising, all that sort of stuff. And I started studying, and had a recruiter reach out to me and finally interviewed and passed. I always want to be able to point to a couple things or like big wins for the year. And it was looking like a big whole L. Like I was sort of, there wasn't any big financial windfalls, and there wasn't any big career moves. And so like, the Amazon thing came through, and that was sort of the big check mark at the end of the year. About a month before that recruiter reached out, I was getting back into the rhythm. I sort of dropped everything and was sort of figuring out, sort of just getting into the right mental space, right health space. I dropped like 30 pounds and just was like, everything's going in a good direction. And I started studying, and recruiter reached out, and I said, sure, let's go. Like, why not? What do I got to lose?